The artifact collection vessel, Persistence, drifted through the debris field surrounding Arcturus IV. Its scarred hull, a testament to years of scavenging runs through the galaxy's forgotten corners. Mira Santos adjusted the sensor array, her weathered hands dancing across the holographic controls with practiced efficiency. Out here in what the locals called the shattered belt, remnants of civilizations, long dead, floated like cosmic graveyards waiting for someone desperate or stupid enough to claim them. Another day, another credit, Mira muttered to herself, watching the scanner sweep across a particularly dense cluster of metallic debris. The gel traders had been through this sector months ago, picking over the obvious salvage with their superior technology. What they left behind was either worthless or too dangerous to bother with. Perfect for someone like her. The alerts chimed softly as the scanner detected an anomaly. Mira frowned, leaning forward to examine the readout. Partially buried beneath a collapsed mining platform, the sensors showed a metallic fragment with unusual energy signatures. She maneuvered the collection arm, carefully debris, crunching against the ship's shields as she extracted the object. What she pulled into the cargo bay defied immediate categorization. The fragment was roughly the size of her fist, composed of an alloy that seemed to shimmer between silver and deep blue, depending on the angle. But what caught her attention were the markings etched along one-edge symbols that looked disturbingly familiar. Mira ran her fingers along the surface, and suddenly the fragment pulsed with warm light. The symbols rearranged themselves, becoming clearly legible: Prometheus Project, authorized personnel only. "What the hell?" she whispered, nearly dropping the artifact. The text was in Old English, a language that hadn't been used in centuries, not since before the Great Exodus, when humanity had scattered across the stars in their primitive generation ships. Before she could process the implications, her proximity alarm screamed. A massive archaeological vessel materialized from behind a nearby asteroid, its sleek hull bearing the distinctive spiral markings of the gel hegemony. Smaller ships flanked it, Tarko research vessels by their design. A communication channel crackled to life. "Attention, human vessel." The voice was aristocratic, dripping with condescension. "You are operating in a restricted archaeological zone. Power down your engines and prepare to be boarded." Mira clutched the fragment tighter. She recognized that voice: Captain Nethar, one of the gel's most notorious archaeological commissioners. The gel had a monopoly on pre-Exodus technology, using their supposed superiority to keep humanity relegated to scavenger work. "This is an open salvage zone," Mira replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I have every right to be here." "Rights." Nethar's laugh was like breaking glass. "Your kind forfeited such notions the day you proved incapable of maintaining your own civilization. Stand down." Mira looked at the fragment in her hands, its symbols still glowing softly. Something about it felt important, vital in a way she couldn't explain. Without another word, she fired up the Persistence's engines and dove toward the mining complex below. The chase began immediately. Gel fighters, sleek and predatory, swarmed after her like angry wasps. Mira's ship might have been old, but she knew it intimately. She threaded through the debris field with desperate precision, using the wreckage as cover, while energy bolts scorched past her viewports. She plunged into the mining complex through a blown-out entrance, her ship barely fitting through the twisted metal framework. The gel fighters pulled back; they were too large to follow, and even they weren't reckless enough to risk their precious vessels in such confined spaces. Mira brought the Persistence down in what had once been a processing bay. Emergency lighting cast everything in hellish red, and the deck plates groaned under the sudden weight. She grabbed her kit, and the fragment then set out to find another exit before the gel figured out how to get in. The corridors were a maze of collapsed support beams and scattered equipment. Mira picked her way carefully, the fragment's glow providing additional illumination in the gloom. As she moved deeper into the complex, she began to notice something odd about the architecture. The design aesthetic was familiar in a way that made her skin crawl too familiar. She was so focused on the artifact that she almost walked into the figure standing in the corridor ahead. Mira spun, hand moving to her sidearm, then stopped. The being before her was clearly Tarko, tall, willowy, with the characteristic silver-blue skin and large, dark eyes. But he wore the robes of a scholar, not a soldier. "Please," he said, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. His accent was thick, but understandable. "I mean no harm. I am Dr. Ralcor, xenoarchaeologist from the University of Talshar." Mira kept her weapon half-drawn. "What do you want?" "The same thing you do, I suspect." Ralcor's eyes fixed on the glowing fragment in her other hand. "To understand what you found. That device, it is not gel technology." "How do you know?" Because Ralcor stepped closer, his expression intense. "I have spent my entire career studying what you humans call pre-Exodus artifacts. My people have legends, stories passed down through generations about the ancients, a race that built wonders beyond imagining before vanishing into the void. Recently, I have begun to suspect that these ancients were not alien at all." Mira felt her breath catch. "You think they were human?" "I think," Ralcor said carefully, "that your people's history is not what you've been told. And I think that fragment you carry is proof." Before Mira could respond, the sound of cutting torches echoed through the complex. The gel had arrived and were burning their way in. "There's another way out," Mira said, making a decision that would change everything. "But I'm not leaving without answers. You help me figure out what this thing is, and I'll share whatever we find." Ralcor nodded solemnly. "Agreed. There is a research station deeper in the complex. If we can reach it." They ran through the twisting corridors as the sounds of pursuit grew closer. Gel soldiers moved with military precision, their equipment cutting through obstacles like butter. But Mira and Ralcor had the advantage of desperation and local knowledge. The research station, when they finally reached it, was a vast chamber, filled with empty equipment racks and dead monitors. But in the center stood something that made them both stop in their tracks, a circular platform surrounded by what could only be connection ports. "The fragment," Ralcor whispered. "It's the key." Mira approached the platform cautiously. The ports were clearly designed for something the size and shape of her artifact. As she drew closer, the fragment's glow intensified, and she could feel a subtle vibration running through it. "Do it," Ralcor urged, "before they find us." Mira placed the fragment into the central port. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. The chamber exploded with light. Ancient systems dormant for centuries roared to life. The walls themselves became displays showing star charts, technical schematics, and historical records that flowed past too quickly to comprehend. And then, in the center of it all, a hologram materialized. It was a human figure, middle-aged, wearing a uniform that looked official, but dated. When he spoke, his words were translated in real time into both Standard and Tarko script. "Greetings. If you are seeing this message, then the Prometheus project has finally been rediscovered. I am Admiral Marcus Chen." The hologram paused, and the translation systems corrected themselves. The figure continued. "I am Admiral Marcus Harrison, Director of the Colonial Expansion Initiative." Mira felt the world tilt around her. Ralcor made a sound that might have been a gasp or a prayer. The hologram continued its recorded message. "By the time this recording is activated, it will have been many centuries since humanity's golden age of expansion. The records you are accessing contain the truth that others have tried to bury, that humanity once possessed faster-than-light technology, far superior to anything that would come after." The displays around them shifted, showing images of vast human cities, spanning entire star systems, fleets of ships moving between galaxies' technologies that made current standards look like stone tools. Our civilization reached heights that won't be seen again for 1,000 years. We colonized countless worlds, established trade networks spanning half the galaxy, and achieved scientific breakthroughs that even the GL hegemony builds upon today, though they do not know it. Ralcor was translating frantically on his personal device. "This is impossible," he muttered. "The records show humanity as barely space-capable when the gel made first contact." "The gel have lied," the hologram continued, as if responding to their conversation. "Our technology, our knowledge, our very existence was systematically erased from galactic history. When the Prometheus network fell, whether through war plague or simple entropy, those who survived were left with fragments. Your descendants, scattered and diminished, were relegated to the margins of civilization by those who feared what you once were." The chamber shook. Explosions echoed through the complex as the gel forces blasted their way closer. "We have to copy this data," Mira said urgently. "All of it." "The fragment is a master key," Harrison's hologram explained, as if hearing her. "It will unlock Prometheus archives throughout the galaxy. Find them. Restore the truth. Claim your birthright." Ralcor was already connecting his equipment to the station's data ports. "I'm downloading everything," he said. "But the files are enormous. It will take time we don't have." The sound of Gel troops was getting closer. Shouts echoed from the corridors, followed by the whine of energy weapons. "There," Ralcor said, disconnecting his device. "I have as much as I could get. But Mira, they cannot be allowed to suppress this information again." Mira looked at him, this alien scholar who had just helped her uncover the greatest secret in galactic history. "You're right. But how do we get it to people who need to know?" "The Galactic Information Network," Ralcor said. "If we can reach a transmission station." "There's one in the upper levels," Mira said. "But we'll have to fight our way through." They moved out of the chamber, just as the first gel soldiers rounded the corner. Energy bolts filled the air. Mira and Ralcor found cover behind an overturned equipment rack. Human Mira Santos. Captain Nethar's voice boomed through a loudspeaker. "You are in possession of restricted archaeological material. Surrender now, and your punishment will be minimal." "Like hell," Mira muttered, returning fire with her sidearm. The running battle through the complex was desperate and chaotic. Mira's knowledge of the layout was their only advantage against superior numbers and firepower. They crawled through ventilation ducts, climbed maintenance shafts, and used their smaller size to access routes the larger gel couldn't follow. When they finally reached the transmission station, Ralcor immediately began connecting his device. "The upload is starting," he said. "But it will take several minutes to transmit everything." Outside, the sound of approaching ships grew louder. Through the station's cracked viewports, they could see gel fighters taking positions around the complex. "They won't risk destroying this place," Mira said. "Not with potential artifacts inside. But once that upload finishes..." "The truth will be out there," Ralcor replied. "Every species in the galaxy will know that humanity's history has been deliberately obscured." The upload bar crept toward completion agonizingly slowly. 73%, 78%, 82%. The door behind them exploded inward. Captain Nethar strode through the smoke, flanked by a squad of heavily armed soldiers. The gel captain was impressive in his ornate armor, his multiple eyes gleaming with cold fury. "Step away from the console," he commanded. "This unauthorized transmission ends now." "Upload at 91%, Ralcor whispered. Mira stood protectively in front of the console. "You know what this is, don't you? You know what we've found." Nethar's expression didn't change. "I know that certain historical inaccuracies have been maintained for the greater good of galactic stability." "Inaccuracies?" Mira laughed bitterly. "You mean lies. You've spent 700 years keeping humanity down, making sure we never remembered what we once were." "Your species was dangerous," Nethar replied coldly. "Uncontrolled. The galaxy is more stable with humanity in its proper place." 96%, Ralcor hissed. One of the gel soldiers raised his weapon, but Nethar held up a hand. "Dr. Ralcor," he said, his voice carrying a different tone when addressing the Tarko scholar. "You are a respected academic. Surely you understand the delicate nature of galactic relations. End this transmission and your career will not suffer." Ralcor looked up from the console, his dark eyes blazing with something Mira had never seen in a Tarko before pure defiance. "I have dedicated my life to uncovering truth, not maintaining comfortable lies." The transmission continues. 100%, the console chimed. "Upload complete. Broadcasting to all receiver stations across the Galactic Information Network." Nethar's composed facade cracked. "You fools! You have no idea what you've done." "We've set the record straight," Mira said. As if in response to her words, alerts began flooding every communication device in the chamber. News services across the galaxy were picking up the transmission. Within minutes, the true history of humanity's golden age was spreading to every corner of civilized space. Nethar activated his communicator with sharp, angry gestures. "All ships converge on this location. Prepare for immediate departure. The operation is compromised." "Running away," Mira taunted. "Regrouping," Nethar corrected. "This changes things, but it does not end them. The Gel hegemony has contingencies." As the Gel forces retreated, Mira and Ralcor stood among the smoking ruins of the transmission station, watching the readings that showed their uploaded data, spreading across 1,000 worlds. "What happens now?" Mira asked. "Now," Ralcor said, examining his portable device, "we wait to see how the galaxy responds to learning that its history is built on a lie." They didn't have to wait long. Within hours, responses were flooding in from across known space. Independent worlds that had been marginalized by the GL hegemony were demanding access to Prometheus archives. Scientific institutions wanted to verify the data. Most importantly, human colonies that had spent centuries accepting their inferior status were beginning to organize. Dr. Ralcor became an unexpected celebrity, the Tarko scholar, who had helped expose the galaxy's greatest deception. The University of Talshar, initially outraged at his collaboration with a human scavenger, found itself at the center of a new field of study, true galactic archaeology. Mira returned to Earth to find a world transformed. The revelation that humanity had once commanded the stars had ignited something that had been dormant for centuries. Ships were being built, expeditions planned. The fragment she had found, the Prometheus key, was studied and replicated. More archives were discovered. Each one revealed new aspects of humanity's lost golden age. Faster-than-light technology that made gel ships look like toys. Energy sources that could power entire star systems. Medical advances that could extend life indefinitely. But perhaps the most important discovery was simpler than all of that. Other species, Tarko-Zephyrian, even some gel dissidents began offering alliance. The galaxy that had kept humanity marginalized was changing force to confront the fact that their technological supremacy was built on foundations laid by the very species they had oppressed. A year after Mira's discovery, the first new human exploration vessel in 7 centuries launched from Earth's orbital shipyards. Its name was inscribed on the hull in Old English and 10 other languages, Prometheus Reborn. Mira stood on the bridge as captain with Dr. Ralcor, serving as chief archaeologist. Their mission was simple: find the remaining Prometheus archives and reclaim humanity's birthright among the stars. As they entered hyperspace, leaving Earth's solar system behind, Mira reflected on how much had changed. The Gel hegemony still controlled vast swaths of space, but their monopoly was broken. Humanity was no longer content to scavenge in the shadows. And across the galaxy, other species were awakening to the truth that had been hidden from them. The Prometheus key sat in its place of honor on the bridge, its symbols still glowing softly. Sometimes, Mira wondered what Admiral Harrison would think if he could see what his message had accomplished. 700 years of deliberate amnesia ended by a scavenger who refused to accept that humanity deserved anything less than the stars themselves. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and for the first time in centuries, humanity was ready to explore it again, not as beggars or scavengers, but as the spacefaring civilization they had always been meant to be. In the depths of space, ancient Prometheus stations powered up one by one, their centuries-long sleep finally ended. Each activation sent out a signal that could be heard by those who knew how to listen. We remember. We return. We reclaim what was always ours. The age of human expansion was beginning anew, and this time, no one would be allowed to forget. As the Prometheus Reborn sailed toward its first destination, rumors of an intact human starbase in the Centauri expanse. Mira allowed herself a smile. She had set out looking for salvage to pay for her next meal. Instead, she had found something infinitely more valuable: the truth about who humanity really was. And that truth would echo across the galaxy for generations to come.